Hello, my bookish besties, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Adrienne. We like to yap a little bit over here. So buckle in. Today we are going to be doing quite a lot of yapping. We have our summer reading wrap up. I have read 25 books this summer between June and July, which is a lot of books to talk about. So like I said, buckle in, grab yourself a fun little drinky, a snack, whatever you need to do, and let's get yapping. I'm going to try to keep this really short, but like I said, I like to yap, so we'll just have to see what happens. But anywho, I do have my monthly stats here with me. I will break them down really quickly for you guys. In June, I read 15 books. I read 5,372 total pages for an average star rating of 3.4. I read 4 fantasy, 4 romance, 4 fiction, 1 mystery, 1 nonfiction, and 1 YA. And I didn't do a least favorite or a favorite. And then as far as July, we read 10 books for a total of 3,493 pages, 3.3 average star rating. We read 2 fantasy, 2 romance, 2 YA, 2 fiction, 2 mystery. That was a lot of things, but anywho, I am going to quickly run through this list with you guys. Right, so let's go ahead and discuss the books that I read in the months of June and July. The first book I read, here it is. First, I read The Last Contract of Isako. This is by Fonda Lee. This is her newest release. This book, I have really mixed opinions on, to be honest. I rated it a 3-star. I think on one hand, this book was incredibly well written. Like, to the point I'm extremely excited to read more Fonda Lee's works here in the future. But I didn't really jive with the premise too much. And I do think that part of that was the marketing. This is marketed as a epic space opera. Basically, we are supposed to be following our main character here as she explores kind of her almost retirement. Like, she is a assassin in space and she is about to retire, and it advertises as she's about to go on one last epic mission. However, she doesn't really do that, and a majority of this book also follows another character's POVs. Like, it was good. It's just, I think if I had gone in with different expectations, I would have liked it so much more. I genuinely thought we were going to be following, like, you know, this badass space assassin. Like, basically think, like, Selena Sardothian in space. Like, we were going to get epic battles, etc. And it's more so like a murder mystery almost. I would still recommend it. Just go in with the correct expectation. Next, I read The Correspondent. I rated this a 3-star. This book is getting a lot of hype right now, but if you somehow have not heard of it, it is basically following this older woman as she writes letters to several different people. Like, she writes to her brother, she writes to her children, I believe, she writes to this guy who's like helping her, basically like a Dell employee type of person. And honestly, it just didn't resonate with me too much. I don't even know why. It just was a little boring for me. I do think that I'm in a book club and so many of the girls in book club really, really loved this. But most of the girls in book club that really, really loved it have children and kind of have like these experiences that they could relate to it. I don't have any children, and like, I just didn't personally find it relatable. Also, there were several aspects of the story that I just didn't jive with. I didn't love it. That being said, I would still recommend checking this book out. It is incredibly popular for a reason. I think I am kind of a, you know, far left field person for this, because I think, you know, I do think most people could love this book. I just, like I said, there were some things that I didn't necessarily love, but that doesn't mean that it was a bad book. Next, I read To Clutch a Razor. This is book 2 from When Among Crows. Similarly to When Among Crows, I kind of just thought this one was like simultaneously too short while also like having a full complete story. Basically, this one continues directly from the first book, which the first book is about this guy who is a knight. He can draw like this sword from his spine, basically, and he uses that to fight these like mythical creatures. Like, if you've ever seen the TV show Grimm, it gives very similar energy to that. Like, it's like people who are also mystical creatures kind of thing. I rated it a 4-star, but it was realistically like a 3.75. I liked it, but I wish that these books were slightly longer. Like I said, it just kind of like lacks something when it's this short, to be honest. And also, these characters are a little confusing to me. I did out the math. They've only known each other for like 3 weeks, which is crazy because they are incredibly close. Like, there is a strange romance I say strange because to me it makes no sense that they are that connected when they've only known each other 3 weeks, you know what I mean? And then also, like, the friendships are just a little weird. Like, they would literally die for each other when they've only known each other 3 weeks. Like, it just feels very odd, I guess. I don't know. I like it. Don't get me wrong. And I'm excited to see if she writes more in this universe. Like, I think the world building and the characters themselves are really cool. It's just some of the plot devices don't necessarily work for me. After that, I went and read Writers and Lovers. This is book 1 in kind of like a duology by Lily King. This follows Casey as she is struggling to find herself in the world. She wants to be a writer really bad. She's kind of torn between this like love triangle situation. She is just down bad. And I related to Casey so much. It was crazy. I rated this book a 4-star. I think that this is the kind of story that's not necessarily for everybody, but for me, it was the whole world. Like I said, I related to Casey so much. It was kind of like frightening at times, which if you didn't know about me, like if this is perchance the first video of mine you're clicking on, I used to be a writer. I am still kind of a writer. I don't write as much these days, but I just related to her so bad. Like, just there is a quote in the first book. One second, let me find it for you. She said, "I don't write because I think I have something to say. I write because if I don't, everything feels even worse." Yeah, I fear I get that. In my review, I said, "Oh man, I related to Casey so much. Sometimes it was awful. She's just an anxiety-filled writer wannabe who has just lost someone close to her, suffers from abandonment issues, and writes about it all along the way." So, like I said, I don't necessarily think this is going to be the book for everybody. It's very much just like kind of a character study. We literally just follow Casey as she is kind of just living life. But it was so good. Like I said, to me, perfect. Near perfect, though. Like, I rated it a 4. I do think in hindsight, it's probably like a 4.5. Again, I never got those 5-star feelings, but like, it is perfect to me. After that, I did read The Wedding People. I rated this a 4.75. It was like nearly perfect. I think in my Goodreads review, I said the only reason it wasn't perfect was as a girly with emetophobia, this book does kind of talk about a lot, which like was a little bit for me to handle. But this book basically follows this woman who has gone to this like far off remote island to herself, you know what I mean? And she runs into this like bubbly, excited lady who is getting married at the resort. And there's been a mistake. The resort was supposed to be like 100% booked only for the wedding party. But somehow this lady sneaks in and the bride finds her and is like, "Girl, you can't do that on my big day." So we follow them as they kind of have this like unexpected friendship. There is an unexpected romance. Like, everything in this was just like I said, near perfect. I think that this is such a fun and thought-provoking book. It really explores the idea of like, when we have thoughts like that, are we being selfish? Like, it really, really dives deep into that, and I love it so much. Again, I don't think this is going to be a book for everybody, but I do think that it is worth trying. I really, really liked it, to be honest. Like I said, near perfect. Near perfect. After that, I read We're a Bad Idea, Right? This is one of the newer releases by K.L. Walther. I love this author so, so much. She writes these like heartwarming, fun YA romances that still have mature themes to them. This one is basically about these two characters who fake date, but they also are trying to like discover things about themselves along the way, as we do. Our main character, Audrey, kind of wants to, skip college basically and run a pottery business, which she's already been doing and she's very successful at it. But her parents are kind of like, "Yo girl, you need to go to school." And then her best friend Henry, who helps her with the business, is also kind of trying to win back his ex. They're trying to make her crush jealous, I believe. This is definitely a 3-star book. It is one of those that like, I feel like now I don't really remember much about it, but in the moment I enjoyed reading it. It was just a quick, easy read. I love K.L. Walther's books for that kind of quick, easy YA romance feeling. I remember this book being really fun. They basically turn her house into an Airbnb for like the 2 weeks her parents are out of town so that she can earn some money to make the down payment for her pottery, school that she's trying to get into. And yeah, it was just kind of like a silly, goofy time. If this is the house that they were renting out, that's crazy. I never really looked at this cover before, I guess. But yeah, I don't know that I'd recommend it. I also don't know that I wouldn't recommend it. It was a quick, easy palate cleanser from an author I enjoy. After that, I read First and Forever. This is by Lynn Painter. It is basically about like I think maybe a PR agent and a football player who fall in love. And it is really bad. I'm so sorry. I try not to talk mean about books, but it was just so bad. I rated it a 2.5 stars. Like, it was a very, very middle book for me. They felt just so random, and the guy, from what I remember, was like too perfect, and I don't like that. He needs some sort of flaw. Every character needs some sort of flaw. It makes him human. But let me read my review for you, because this is one of those books that I simply cannot remember what I thought about it beyond not liking it. Like, it's done. I said, I enjoyed the fact that this book was so short and a quick read, but at the same time, it needed to be longer. It was not bad, but definitely not a new fave. The plot progressed so fast, and it made it feel extra silly goofy. Basically, Duffy is bad news for the local football team, but Connor, the star football player, ends up liking her, and they kind of date. But by kinda, I mean, like, every time they try to go on a date, something bad happens, which makes their strong connection feels super random. I do remember that. They, like, were super obsessed with each other, but, like, never interacted, which, weird. The characters themselves are cute, I guess. Connor is very perfect, but, like, almost disgustingly so. He's just so gentle and sweet, but also the tallest, strongest dude ever. And Duffy is kind of shy and silly, I guess. I feel like I learned more about Connor than her, though, to be honest. The plot I pretty much already covered. It moved so fast and was so silly. But it was good, very sweet and romantic, but rushed. Like, it was cute. I'm just confused while they were all, yay, I'm in love with you, after, like, 2 failed dates. And the ending was silly and incredibly rushed. Which, I don't even remember what the ending was, so. Anywho, after that, I read Death's Daughter. I rated this book a 3 stars. It is one that I got an advanced listener's copy to, I believe, and I will say I do think the audiobook in this case kind of did it a little bit of a disservice. Basically, this book follows this young woman who is Death's daughter, like the title implies, but like nobody knows. It's kind of like a Percy Jackson feeling, almost like there are these people who are almost like these demigods, I guess you could call them. Demigods? I don't know why I pronounced it like that. Because they are like half their human parent and half the like god or entity or whatever that their parent got with. So like she is the daughter of death and she is the only one, I believe. But she, because of that, has like these powers that like kind of are bad. Like if I remember right, she has to feed on despair. But if she does so, it hurts people. I don't know. It's like one of those stories where the premise and the idea was super, super cool, but I did lose interest about halfway through the book. It just got kind of boring and repetitive, but I do remember there were some really cool plot twists and kind of like, you know, just these like really interesting plot devices thrown in there. I will say when I signed up for the arc, I did think that it was going to be a standalone, and I believe now it is going to in fact be a series, which does make sense for the project, like the way the story progressed, but I wish I had known that going into it, to be honest. There was an incredibly spicy scene that just kind of came out of nowhere, and it really turned me off to the story, to be honest. I will say in hindsight, it kind of made sense. Like it was one of those scenes that like in the moment I was like, ugh, but then afterwards I was like, oh, I guess I see it kind of, but yeah, I don't know. It's like one of those books that like by the end, okay, it made sense and everything was like, okay, we're cooking. But in the moment, it didn't make sense. And I don't like stories like that where like, you know? Oh, and also I forgot, I just reread my review. I forgot that this book is like kind of a murder mystery, which I did think was very interesting, especially because the murder that happens looks like she did it. And being Death's daughter, she's like, uh-oh. But yeah. Overall, it's just a very mid book. I don't know if I want to continue to the next one or not. After that, I picked up In Case I Go Missing. This book was surprisingly so good. It gave me kind of those YA murder mystery vibes that something like The Good Girl's Guide to Murder gave me. Like it was just like a crazy YA murder mystery, which I personally find really fun. I always think they're kind of just like I feel like teenagers look at stuff in a different way than adults, and they don't have like a job behind them. Like obviously like a cop is following the rules when they're trying to do these investigations, but like a 17-year-old who just wants to figure out what happened to her best friend, there are no freaking rules for her, okay? And it was just so interesting. It basically follows these two friends who find this binder from their best friend. I believe her name was Sarah. And she leaves them this binder titled In Case I Go Missing. And it's all these clues as to what could have happened to her and who could be involved. So we follow the two best friends as they are trying to solve the missing persons case of their best friend. And it was actually so good, like I said. I would say it's one of those books that like don't go in with the highest of expectations, but like go in with kind of like Good Girl's Guide to Murder expectations, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was just a fun time. It was so fun. I love a good YA mystery. So if that's your vibe, I would highly recommend checking this. After that, I finally finished reading Malice. This is a book my friend Josh has been trying to convince me to read for forever. If you've been on any of my other videos, I have, in fact, been reading this forever. But I did finally finish it back in June. I rated this a 3.5. I do feel like on one hand that the story was incredibly good, but on the other half, I struggled with it a lot. It did take me a really long time to read. There are so many characters, and I just found it a little confusing. But the main character, Corbin, I did latch onto his story quite a lot, and I did quite enjoy it, and there were incredibly cool scenes and stuff. It's just like I said, I did struggle just enough that I'm like, well, I can't rate you any higher than a 3.5, like logically, because I was so confused. Like, ask me what this book's about. I don't know, but I know I enjoyed my time with it, you know? Basically, we kind of are following these. On the back, there's 4 main characters. There were like 30, okay? We basically are following these different paths, like these different characters who are all in different areas of the world. It was very like Game of Thrones, so I do feel like if this was a TV show, I would get it. But something about reading it like this, girl, I don't have a single clue what's happening. But we follow these different characters, okay? And they are all going through these different paths of life. Like we follow Corbin as he is trying to basically train to be a warrior. And we follow Veridus, who is he's like a guard to the king, who is Nathair, and he is kind of like a bad guy. Like, he is trying to kind of like trick other people, you know what I'm saying? And then we follow Evnis. I don't remember who Evnis is, though. And then there's also Corbin's sister and some other POVs. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like a medieval Viking fantasy. Like I said, I enjoyed it enough that I'm currently reading book 2. I just, it's like almost 800 pages, no, 600. It's like 600 pages, okay? And I think I would recommend it. It's just, this is definitely a brain-on book, okay? Also, do not try to read just the audiobook. It is so confusing, and you will be confused. Trust me. After that, I picked up the first installment of the Emma and Lion series. Again, I feel like I'm kind of out of the loop on this. I rated the first one a 3-star. Like, it was okay, but pretty much nothing happens. I will admit, I do think it was a setup book. Like, I do think that more stuff could happen. But so far, I am not necessarily convinced to continue on with the series, even though they're so quick and easy. I just, like, I don't know that it is the series for me. The first one, we basically follow Emma as she like moves into her new house, her new living situation, and she is like dealing with some drama. Like, if I remember right, her and her uncle don't get along, who is the owner of the house or something like that. Yeah, I don't know. It's literally her diary. Like, it is the unselected journals of Emma and Lion. So you are literally just following her as she kind of like brain dumps her life, which like I usually like those kind of stories, but this one was just really boring. Like, nothing happened. But like I said, I think I could be convinced to go on. It's just so far, I'm not. So let me know, should I continue Emma and Lion? I do currently have the second one checked out because they are all, at least as of right now, on Kindle Unlimited. I just like can't bring myself to do it. After that, I did pick up Tuesdays with Morrie. This one I didn't rate because I don't usually rate nonfiction. I feel like that's not necessarily fair. But I will say, if I did have to put a star rating to this, I think I'd do like a 2 or a 3. For me, this book just didn't impact me the way I think it impacts most other people. I'm not saying it's a bad story or that the lessons and stuff in here are bad. I'm just saying, I think for me, I already kind of knew what this book was trying to get you to understand. It's basically this guy who reconnects with his professor as his professor is about to die, and they kind of like bounce, you know, life lessons off of each other. And Morrie is trying to like instill in the author Mitch, you know, make sure you get out there and you tell people you love them, you do the things that scare you, etc. But they're all messages I've already learned in life. I will say I do think that this book has its place. And I think if I had read it maybe in like high school, it would have stuck with me. But as an almost 28-year-old, it just didn't do much for me. I do think it was worth the read, and the audiobook is really good because it, I believe, is narrated by Mitch himself. So you kind of hear the infliction of the pain and the, you know, just the warmth and stuff. And there was also a clip, at least in the version I listened to, that was like an actual interview between him and Morrie, which I thought was really cool. But yeah, overall, I just think for me, this book didn't do much. I would still recommend checking it out, though. It was a quick and easy story, and there were parts that did stick with me. It's just I don't think that it instilled anything in me that I didn't already know. After that, I finally finished All Hail Chaos. This is book 2 in the Time of Iron trilogy. It was originally going to be a duology, which, again, I do think if I had gone into it knowing that there was going to be a third book, maybe I would have enjoyed it more. This book basically continues from book 1. I can't think of what book 1 is called at the moment. Oh, Long Live Evil. It's on the back here. This book I rated a 3-star. On one hand, it was really fun, but I was so confused. Okay, if you were planning to pick up this trilogy, if you haven't started it yet, would maybe recommend waiting until the third book releases, because the way Sarah Brees Renan writes, she writes in such a fun way, but it is very confusing. The characters just kind of like they're all over the place, and they also kind of talk in code. The beginning of each chapter is like the excerpt of what actually happened in the book, because basically this story follows a character who gets plopped into her favorite fantasy world, which like is very fun and it is very, very unique. But each chapter starts with like what actually happened in that chapter or whatever, and then we follow the story of like what's happening now that she is there to influence it. And I don't know, I just found it really confusing. I liked the story, like the ending flabbergasted. Okay, like I feel like I have to read book 3 now, but I just was having a really hard time keeping up with like, okay, who are you again? What's happening? What happened? You know, it got to a point where it was a lot. And I think, like I was kind of saying earlier, I would recommend the story still. I just personally would recommend either doing deep research as to what is happening and what did happen in book 1, or going back and rereading, or maybe just waiting till they're all 3 out and reading them back to back. Because as someone who read the first one sometime last year and have read quite a few books between that, this one was just not super enjoyable for me because I was so confused. After that, I read 7 Days in June. This is by Tia Williams. The story just didn't do it for me, you guys. I rated it a 3-star. I just really did not enjoy my time with this book at all. Yeah, let me read my review. I will say that I disliked my time with this book literally so much, but it has such an important message, and I also learned a lot about a demographic that I'm not a member of, obviously, which I did enjoy, and I do think that those kind of stories are very important. I just had such a bad time reading it. Yeah. Like, it's one of those weird, like, gray areas because, like I said, on one hand, the story and the message was so important, but on the other hand, I don't like reading stories like that. So, like, it's like a very true 3 for me because, like I said, I got something from it, but I hated it at the same time. I will say, too, I thought this was one of those weird romances where I almost wish there wasn't a happily ever after. To me, it didn't make sense that they got back together at the end. Slight spoiler, but, I mean, it's a romance. But, yeah, I really didn't like this book. I'm really, really sorry. It didn't do it for me. And then, last but not least, in the month of June, I picked up Once and Again. This is the newest release, I believe, by Rebecca Serrell, which, again, if you are a regular viewer of this channel, you know Rebecca Serrell and I have a complicated relationship, okay? I read In 5 Years when it first came out, or not even when it first came out, but like when I first got back into reading, and I loved it. And I have read every release of hers since then, like kind of chasing that high. And then I will say this one got pretty close, actually. This book is basically about a family who they have this like special ability to one time in their life go back in time and make changes. So this book, like to its core, is very much about the idea that everything happens for a reason, which is one of my all-time favorite like theories, quotes, ideas, whatever you want to call it. So I did really resonate with that. I will say there were moments in this book that did frustrate me, but I think overall the message of this book was really, really good, and it was one of those stories that like kept me gripped the whole time. I don't know why. I want to say it's very similar to Encanto. Like at the same time, not at all, but it kind of gave me those similar feelings. Like we explore the idea of family a lot in this one, and yeah, I would highly recommend it. It gave me, like I said, very similar feelings that I got to reading in 5 years, which I have been looking for. It's one of those weird instances where I kind of want the physical copy because I could actually see myself rereading it in the future. But okay, those are all of the books that I read in June. Let's now discuss the ones I read in July, okay? Which I will admit, July was a rough month, okay? We read some not so bangers in July. Let's discuss them. The first one, starting out with an absolute not bang, I read The Score. This is book 3 in the Off-Campus series. I rated this a 2-star. It was so bad. It was so bad, which is crazy because if you watched my May reading wrap up, I absolutely adored the first 2 books in this series. However, I read those in a span of like 24 hours, okay? I read them so fast. The Score, I read it pretty much most of May, all of June, and some of July. Why? Because it had no plot. It had literally no plot. It was literally just spice, which, like, if that's your cup of tea, that's cool. But unfortunately, it is not my cup of tea. I need at least a little bit of a plot, just a little bit. And I know what you're thinking. Well, girl, there is a plot. No, there's not. And unfortunately, the ending, like the big kind of plot twist, like drama action piece thing that happens, I did unfortunately already know about it because I had seen so many TikToks that were like, oh, but the girlies that haven't read Off Campus, they don't know about X. Well, now I know about X, and it made the book just like even worse because I already knew. Obviously, I love Dean and Allie in the show, but I do think unfortunately their book suffered from a lack of plot. After that, I finally finished Everyone in This Bank is a Thief. This one, for some reason, didn't hit me as hard as the other 2. I did rate it a 3-star, and I don't know if it's because it took me so long to read it, or if because like there was just something lacking in this one. Basically, we follow Ernest Hemingway. No, I've done that every time I try to talk about this book. We follow Ernest Cunningham as he goes through his 3rd mystery. Basically, if you have not heard of this series, it follows this character, Ernest, who is an author, and he writes about murder mysteries, but he likes to write them using his own experiences. Like, he is kind of a detective who's also a writer who also has read a lot of murder mysteries. So in the first book, it is Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone. We follow him as he kind of solves a mystery that's happening at his family reunion. The second one, Everyone on This Train is a Suspect. We kind of follow him as he's like on a tour for his first book and someone gets murdered and it's like a closed door setting scenario thing and he's trying to solve it. This one, he basically gets held hostage in a bank and everyone in that bank is a thief of something different. Like I said, I don't really know why this one didn't hit as hard, but it just didn't. I still liked it, and I would still highly recommend this series. I don't know how many books are going to be in it. I don't know what's happening, but I do still recommend the series. This one just didn't land as hard for me. I don't know. I think it's because this one, the mystery felt a little weird. Like the first one, Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, really, really genuinely kept me on my toes. This one I wasn't as invested, but anywho, I'd still highly recommend. Also, if you ever somehow meet Benjamin Stevenson, he's a lovely man. So, my book is signed. I hope he comes back to America for book 4. After that, I picked up Phoebe Berman's Gonna Lose It again. It's like a near perfect book for me. However, similarly to the other one, this one does mention a lot. So I couldn't quite rate it a 5. Also, it did have its flaws, but overall this book was so much fun. It basically follows Phoebe. She is I want to say a 30-year-old virgin, or she's like about to be 30, and she makes basically this bucket list of how can she lose it before she turns 30. And it is just so funny. We basically follow her as she is kind of like dating slash kind of, I don't even know what we would call it. Like, she is trying to hook up with these multiple guys. So we follow her as she is kind of navigating the world as a single virgin, and it's just so funny. I love it so much. It gave me like early 2000s rom-com feels. Like, for some reason, something that's coming to mind is Freaky Friday. It's kind of like that era of movie. It is nothing like Freaky Friday, but it's kind of like those vibes, if you catch my drift. But yeah, I would highly recommend reading this book. There were several moments in here that surprised me, and I think that's really incredible to pull off, especially in such a short book. So if for some reason you've not read this one yet, I would highly recommend picking it up. After that, I read Girl's Girl. This I rated a 4-star. I just thought it was super fun. It was a very like sweet coming of age story. It reminded me a lot of high school. Like, obviously I don't really relate to the characters at all. It is about a character who is in a trio of friends, and one afternoon 2 of the trio kiss, and it kind of just changes their whole friendship dynamic. But it did remind me of kind of just like those weird, awful, exciting, like dramatic times of being a teenager. I really liked it. Like I said, I do think it would be a really sweet coming of age for anyone to read. It reminded me a lot of youth and just why I miss being a teenager so much. It is a very short and quick, easy read. And yeah, I just thought it was really sweet. I really liked it. It like genuinely surprised me. It's kind of one of those books that I was like, I don't know if I'm going to vibe with this. Like, I was worried maybe I kind of aged out. I wasn't going to find it relatable, etc. But it was actually really sweet and very relatable. After that, I read a YA fantasy book that is part of a duology. It is called To Steal from Thieves. I rated this a 2-star. This is one of those weird books where it is advertised as a certain thing, and then that thing barely happens. I thought that the vibes of this book were going to be very much Six of Crows. It is advertised kind of as like a heist, like a fun YA heist, okay? So I read that and I said, yeah, it's going to be Mistborn. It's going to be Six of Crows. It's going to be awesome. And then, like, it's barely a heist. It's just weird. I didn't like it. And a part of me is like, it's only a duology. I could finish it. And then the other part of me is like, girl, absolutely not. There's not a single piece of me that has any interest in finishing it, unfortunately. Yeah, the vibes on it were just not vibing, to be honest. The heist happens in like a literal page. It's a heist book. Anywho, let's move on. After that, I listened to My Husband's Wife. This is the newest release from Alice Feeney. I rated this a 4-star. It's one of those weird books where, like, it was like a Freida McFadden. Like, it just, like, made 0 sense. But at the same time, like, the plot was just so fast-paced and so many twists and turns and craziness, and I ate it up. I fear I did, especially an audiobook. Something about Alice Feeney's audiobooks, they are so good. They are so immersive. She does this thing in her audiobooks, at least the 2 or 3 that I've listened to, where it's not necessarily a graphic audio, but there are still like sound effects that make it really cool. Like in this one, the character is out on a jog, right? And she's like jogging, and you can hear like the crunch of her pavement steps. And I love that. I think it is so cool. It like really immerses you in the story. Or like if there's wind, there will be like sound effects of like whoosh, you know? But basically this one is about a girl. She goes on a run and she comes home and her house is no longer her house. Like her keys don't work. Her husband is like, yo, who are you? And there is another woman who looks pretty much identical to her in her house. And she spends the whole novel being like, yo, what the frick? This is my house, and that's my husband. And she like goes to the police, and all this stuff happens, and it was just crazy. It was absolutely crazy. I would highly recommend, especially if you just want like a fast, easy, keep you on your toes thriller. But like I said, I do recommend it in audiobook. After that, I picked up Light Wielder. Okay, this is book 2 of Metal Slinger. I don't think I was making videos at this time, but sometime last year I did read Metal Slinger, and that was a full 5 stars. I was obsessed with the book. I loved the vibes. It's basically about this woman who escapes her hometown, and she's like doing magic. Actually, I can't even remember what it's about anymore, to be honest. But I loved it. Okay, the vibes were vibing. It was immaculate. And it ended on one of the craziest cliffhangers of all time. If you know, you know. And then we start book 2. And for some reason, there is a 4-year time jump. I'm sorry, but to me that is lazy writing, okay? Rachel, the author, she seems like a lovely lady, but girl, be so for real right now. You're telling me you ended on one of the craziest cliffhangers of all time and you decided to just do a time jump and then like never really revealed what happened during that time? To me, it just feels lazy because it's like, hey, you're right. That decision I made at the end of book 1, it made no sense. So let's just like move past it and pretend nothing happened. But then we get into book 2 and again, nothing happens. We have the 4-year time jump and then just like stuff just happens, but also nothing happens and it makes no sense. The romance makes no sense. The plot makes no sense. Nothing happened. And worst of all, there's gonna be another book. Okay, this book is one of those books where it was pitched as a duology. When all of us read Metal Slinger, we were like, okay, this book is gonna freaking wrap up. Yes. And then, like, supposedly the couple's books, like their story wrapped up in book 2, and book 3 is gonna follow somebody different, and it's gonna wrap up like the world plot. We'll see about that. I rated this a 2-star. It is one of those weird situations, though, where, like, the ending itself, that's a little crazy. You kind of want to see what happens. But at the same time, I don't know that I want to see what happens. I also couldn't even tell you if whatever her name is and whatever his name is, their story actually ended. I couldn't tell you. Then after that, I picked up the other new release by K.L. Walker this summer, The Summer of Second Chances, and this book was so good. I rated it a 4 stars. This is kind of like a companion / follow-up to The Summer of Broken Rules, which is one of my all-time favorite books, to be honest. It gave me very similar feelings, too. We basically follow this girl as her and her family go to Martha's Vineyard, which is where the connection to The Summer of Broken Rules comes in, and she is going through kind of like this second chance romance with this boy that she used to know in her youth who has been obsessed with her his whole life. Okay, talk about freaking yearning. And yeah, it says she feels stuck. All of her friends have gone off to college. Oh, I remember. Basically, our main character decided to take a gap year to take care of her grandmother who has meant like so much to her whole life. And she has dementia, and she's really struggling with the idea of not only going on this family vacation for 4 weeks, but also going, to college, going away for a long time. And she goes on this vacation with her family, and she re-meets her like summer camp romance kind of situation. And it was just so good. There were so many cameos and callbacks to The Summer of Broken Rules, and just, yeah, again, I love that K.L. Walker can kind of write these like deep but still YA sweetie romances. I would highly recommend this one, especially if you did enjoy The Summer of Broken Rules. They give very similar energy. And then after that, we read our only 5-star of July. I read Heart the Lover. This is book 2 that I was talking about earlier, to writers and lovers. In this one, we follow a character named Jordan as she basically goes again through kind of this love triangle situation, and we follow kind of these 2 timelines, both past, like the romance developing and all of these things, and then present, what happens years later to the one that got away, essentially. And it was just so good. I found it so relatable and so heartwarming. And again, I would highly recommend these books. I do personally believe that you could read them in either order, but I do think that you would get way more out of Heart the Lover if you have read Writers and Lovers first. So I would recommend doing that order if you care. Heart the Lover was just so good, though. I think I loved it. Like, I genuinely think it was a perfect 5-star read for me. It was flawless, unfortunately. And like I said, it was oddly relatable. I feel like everyone kind of has that someone who got away in their life. So it was such a good exploration of like, what does it mean to have that person who got away? Yeah, I loved it. And then last but not least, I read So Old, So Young. This book is weird because on one hand, I really, really liked it and really found it relatable. But then on the other hand, it is a solid 3 stars. These characters are insufferable. It is a character study basically about these 6 friends throughout like a pretty big portion of their life, and we follow them throughout these like 6 different events pretty much that shaped them. But this book was just so unenjoyable to read, let me say, because they are just so unlikable. Every single character, like, don't get me wrong, like I said earlier, I love a flawed character, okay? But these characters are just extra so unlikable. Like, if this is what I have to look forward to as I grow older and make friends and, you know, have my friendships and such change, girl, I don't want it. I don't want to get old. If this is what I have to look forward to when I get old, screw that. Like, absolutely not. But then on the other hand, like I said, I did find it relatable and it was very thought-provoking and I kind of liked it. But on the other hand, it did make me feel just absolutely awful. Like, it made me regret being a human, I guess. But anywho, those are the 25 books I read this summer. Let me know down in the comments below, what did you read this summer? Were you also busy as heck like I was? Which is weird because on one hand, I read so many books, but I barely had time for anything else. Like, I had no time for YouTube. I've missed you guys. But anywho, let me know, what did you read this summer? What are you planning to read this fall? I'm so excited for fall. I literally can't even lie. But anywho, thank you so much for watching today's video. I love you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.